Well, good evening, folks. It is Tuesday, July 26th, 2022. It is 6 p.m. and we're in the council chambers in the city of Platteville, and I am calling the regular meeting of the Common Council to order. Candace will start with roll call.
Jason Arts.
Here.
Lynn Parrott.
Here.
Todd Casper.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Kathy Kopp.
Here. Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing on a planned unit development for 305 East Side Road. We'll start with staff presentation.
Yes, so the request is regarding an application from Family Advocates. They would like to construct a new facility at the property at 305 East Side Road, which they'd like to purchase. And the reason this is a planned unit development is because their proposal is the building would be a combination of offices for the Family Advocates functions themselves, and also it would be a domestic shelter, which under our zoning is basically classified as a residential use. So that combination of commercial office space and residential is kind of a combination that doesn't fit real well under our zoning ordinance. Residential uses or the districts would not allow the office use. Some of the business districts do allow that combination, but they require the residential to be on the second or higher floors. So that would not fit well with their goal of having an accessible facility for their employees and potential tenants. So what we came up with is with this location is to process it as a planned unit development, which gives the Family Advocates the flexibility that they need as far as the zoning uses at that location. It also gives the city some additional ability to look at some of the details of the project to make sure it's good fit for that location. So the building as proposed would be a little over 13,000 square feet. And as I mentioned, it's a combination of office, conference spaces, office storage for their use. And then the residential rooms includes common kitchen, dining area, living space for the people that would be staying at the shelter. There would be off-street parking provided for the office space as well as for any of the residents that would have vehicles. They would have a fenced-in outdoor play area for any children that may be staying at the shelter. And then they would have some additional space on the site for either future expansion. And they're also considering possibly some solar panels to help cover the energy needs of the facility. So the location itself is just north of the industry park. There's kind of a combination of uses in that area. There's residential across the street. On the other side, East Side Road, there's some manufacturing warehouse spaces, as well as just to the north, some commercial space. So there's a variety of uses already in that area. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be a use that would have any detriment to that neighborhood. So it seems like it could be a good fit. And actually their desire is to have a facility that's really more of a commercial building in nature. So that seems to fit with that location. So staff would recommend approval of the zoning for that property, that proposed use. The Plan Commission considered this at their July 11th meeting and also recommended approval. There are some site plans, elevations, and building design details in your packet as well. Any questions for me?
Okay, questions of Joe.
When can we ask questions about the building itself?
Probably when the applicant comes, because Joe, you're not a part of the building plan.
Well, the plan is included in your packet, but Delta 3 did the design, so he can answer technical issues.
Answering questions.
Well, we're going to go to the next part, which would be the applicant statement. Unless Adam, do we want to cover your memo after everybody?
Yeah, I think let's do that.
Okay. All right. So we will take the applicants at the podium now.
Dan Dressens with Delta 3 Engineering. We're working with Family Advocates on the site design and the building design for this project. At the Plan Commission meeting, went over a few basics of the site since we are in the general development plan part of the PUD approval. A couple things I'd like to note is that there were some concerns about how the proximity of the building to the street. It'll sit 120 feet away from the street. So basically about a little bit more than a third of a football field. That's important because we're talking about some noise about East Side Road and truck traffic. I know that's going to come up later on, and I'll touch base with that a little bit. But essentially, there's going to be a driveway in the southwest corner of the property, just north of Skyway Precision. This will line up just south of an existing residential driveway on the west side of the road. This will allow for delivery trucks and workers, as well as residents of the shelter, to come in along the south side. In the front of the building will be the commercial parking lot for basically the workers and more of the business setting for the facility. On the south side, there is going to be some doors for the delivery of goods and materials. And on the back side, screened by the building, will be the parking for the residences. There'll be a dumpster enclosure in the southeast corner of the property. Due to the topography of the site, the northeast corner of the building will be several feet of excavation in that corner to flatten off the building pad. As a result, on the north side of the building, to accommodate for the green space playground area, we will have a segmental block retaining wall or something decorative of that type. And basically that's going to create a 30 to 35 foot wide playground area and green space area that they can also have that for pets if necessary. There was a rendering provided to kind of show what that area would look like. The screening fence, the fence that's shown on there, it's shown as opaque in the picture. However, that would be a privacy fence. We showed it opaque just to kind of show what the concept would be behind it with regards to playground equipment, potentially some picnic benches, etc. But ultimately, that will be a privacy fence. So when a resident is out there playing and observing with their children, that someone driving by will not be able to see them. And that's kind of the intent of everything being in the backside of it. They are talking about a future solar field on the east 1/3 of the property. So this is a 3-acre parcel. They're utilizing the west 2/3 of the parcel. So just a little under 2 acres what they're utilizing. And they're looking at a future solar field on the east side. At this time, we're not required to provide a landscaping plan. We're just in the GDP portion of it. But we are talking about putting some trees around the perimeter, specifically on the north and south side, to help, just kind of make it look a little more, friendlier, as well as provide some screening from the adjacent businesses. As I mentioned, the building is going to sit 120 feet off of East Side Road. It's also 200 feet away from the LP filling station at Legion Oil. I know, Ken, that was a concern of yours, how far away it was, and some safety concerns with that LP filling tank. So we are quite a ways from that. And as I think you can see, there's a support letter from Tina from Legion Oil talking about the frequency of vehicles coming in out of there. Essentially, they have bulk trucks coming in a few times a day. So traffic from that location is not going to have a serious impact on this. There's been some, at the previous meeting, there were some questions about noise in this area. Obviously, if you're going to be outside, there's going to be some truck traffic noise. However, once inside, this is going to be a pre-engineered metal building, but it's going to be balloon framed with insulation and high quality windows. Basically, in meetings that we've been having with family advocates, they want this thing to last and they don't want this maintenance free for as long as possible. So we're not, if you have the Chevette, the Chevrolet and the Cadillac, I mean, they're going more Chevrolet Cadillac style finishes and materials inside so that they do not have to do long-term maintenance. Hence will help cut down on the noise and will help with insulation and heating and cooling costs. Once again, kind of referring to the rendering, I know we're not necessarily required at this time, but it gives you a good idea of what they're looking at. I think there was some concern about this maybe being a boxy building. And as you can tell from the rendering provided, that's not the intent. I mean, the intent is to look like a nice building. It's meant to fit into the area, but yet not bring attention to what the purpose of the building is. So when someone drives by, like, oh, that's a really nice office building, that's a nice commercial building type, not realizing that it's not only just a commercial with offices, but it's got the shelter in the rear. I think that kind of covers all the points that I wanted to make. Are there any questions regards to the site or the building?
Ben?
Site,
the site.
Okay, we did talk about the safety of the tanks, the propane tanks. I know with gasoline tanks, you don't want to work on those things because they blow up. So we talked about what's the hazard as far as propane tanks blowing up.
We talked with Legion Oil a little bit, and they have a safety plan like they have to. But with it being 200 feet away, they saw no concern with if there's ever an issue with the explosion.
My next question is, as far as the parents seeing the tanks, is there a possibility of making a berm so that you're going to have a lot of fill on that one portion there?
Yes. Yep. And there's going to be and there's going to be a couple of things. I mean, first of all, that building is going to be sitting at the property line 8 feet below the Allegiant Oil property. So it's already going to be well above. So we will be doing some type of berm at the top of that slope anyways to keep the water from coming over top of the retaining wall. So by the time you have an 8-foot bank and then you have a 12 to 18 inch high berm on top of that, you're almost 10 feet high. So for someone to sit in the green space and look over to the northeast at the Legion Oil property, they will have a hard time seeing that property, especially the location of where those tanks are in relationship to the property line. They're 50, 60 feet. The large fill tank is right on the property line, but it's 200 feet away. But the actual empty fill tanks they're all massed along Means Drive, they're going to be 50, 60 feet away from the property line. So you won't be able to see them.
Well, then the question was, as far as explosion, I don't know what the answer is. Did you look at that answer?
Basically just from Allegiant Oil. I mean, and they had no concerns about an explosion. I mean, we have to kind of take it for what the owner has to say about that.
Okay, can we ask more questions?
Certainly.
My next question is tornado protection. Where is there going to be tornado protection within this building? Now, you want people away from any windows, and so they're going to have to go to the interior. I assume there's no basement in this building.
That's correct. They will have to go to the interior. So
what are you going to have them do? You're going to have an area interior that's going to be free of windows so that if tornado comes along and breaks windows here, that it won't blow those material, the glass into the area where the people are. So what are you going to do about that?
We'll be able to address that more when we get to the specific implementation plan. But if you look in the floor plan that was that was provided, A101, you can see a kitchen, congregational type room, and that's more than likely where they would bring the people there during a tornado.
Okay, my next question is the roof attached to the footing so that in a tornado, the roof is not lifted off by the tornado?
Yes, we have to account for uplift, but obviously there's only so much uplift we can account for depending on the size of.
And how do you account for uplift? Are you counting by attaching the roof down to the concrete footing? How are you doing it?
Yes, you have your basically.
Or do you want to ask that question later?
You can ask that question later, but basically it's a pre-engineered building. So the columns are attached to the footings, which have embedments into the concrete, and that's connected to the roof up on top. And then so it's a connected piece. Now during a tornado, obviously that's a little bit different situation because we're talking about forces we can't really account for all the time. So you're going to lose some sheet metal, but essentially it meets all of the state of Wisconsin building codes for any type of uplift or any type of windstorm.
Okay, so the roof's attached to the footing, and that is with metal attachment?
There'll be metal columns and metal beams.
Okay. And then my next question is drainage into the building. Since you're making this level, you're going to have potential for drainage into the building, and your situations. Are you using, first of all, concrete walls, or are you making cement block walls?
The,
The
no,
foot- Is the footing concrete?
the footing is concrete
Then you're gonna go from there up?
with metal. So there'll be metal columns that are periodic to hold up the structure. And then I believe that they're going to be going with a metal stud on the exterior due to the architectural panels on the sides.
So there'll be no cement block.
No,
So, because I don't like cement block because they're a problem as far as drainage. So what I'm concerned about is, for example, in the wintertime, next to the building, the area next to the building can thaw, and so that water has the potential to get into the building. So are you gonna have a situation where you're gonna put in tile drainage around the building?
it won't be necessary because when I referred to this before, but when we do the SIP, we'll have a grading plan and you'll see that we're grading the slope away from the building.
Well, the slope is gonna be away, but
Correct, even on the north side. So there are 2 area drains on the north side of the building. And we'll slope everything to the north, get captured by those area drains, and then bring it around the corner side of the building.
you know, I've seen buildings with sitting on a hill and they still get water into the basement. So I'm concerned about that situation. Okay. I guess I may have more questions, but I think I'll stop for the present time. So
Okay,
that's it.
additional questions of the applicant. Todd, anything?
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, Lynn? Kathy? Jason?
No.
Eileen?
I'm not sure if this is the right person to ask this question, but I asked the question of someone earlier who's familiar with family advocates, and I was curious about the current building and how many people could actually be housed in that building and how this new structure was going to accommodate, how many people
Yep, I'm going to
it
defer
would
to
accommodate. So I
Darlene
don't,
on
yeah,
that
if
one.
she was coming up later, I
And
didn't know. or
don't go
not,
too
but-
far because I do have. a
Yep, no
question.
problem.
So we currently have 7 bedrooms. We used to have 5 and we made some changes within our shelter building to accommodate more people. The most people that we've had in shelter are 6 women and 17 children. And we currently have, I believe it's 22 beds plus cribs. I'm sorry, yes, the new building will have 10 bedrooms. Each bedroom will have approximately 4 beds. One room will have 3 due to accommodating for wheelchair accessibility. We will have the potential to be able to grow into 14 rooms. However, we're not able to increase our staff size with this particular grant. And so we figured that 10 rooms would be a good number to go to from 7 to jump up. Those beds will be twin over full bunk beds so that potentially each set of bunk beds could hold 3 people.
So your population that you expect in the new facility is going to be how much?
I would say with 10 bedrooms, I would say we'd probably have 40 to 50 people.
But you're going to go from like 23 people to 40 to 50 people.
Preferably 40, given staff size. But yes, I mean, we have families that come in with 5 or 6 children.
I've heard from some people that you don't intend to increase your population, that it was just this is a plan to increase square footage because your square footage was so small, but there is no plan to increase population. But you're telling me there is a plan to increase population. In fact,
Correct.
to double it.
Potential to double, yes, if we were at full capacity at all times, yes.
Okay.
But with the current capacity, we always have a waiting list. I intend and anticipate that we will have a waiting list going forward as well, even if we are at capacity with all of our rooms being filled.
Dan, stormwater management, this is a 3-acre site, so stormwater management is handled how?
So when the city applied for an EDA grant back in 2008 or 9, we constructed that stormwater pond at the intersection of East Side Road and Evergreen Road. This property was part of the drainage area for that. So that pond coincidentally is designed to handle this property.
And who maintains the pond then?
The city of
So
Platteville maintains
So
that pond.
So that's a city expense.
Yep.
Okay. Is there stormwater drainage management on the current site where they are?
It would just be standard city street.
Any other questions? Catherine?
Well, we have Dan. I know I asked this, but just to reconfirm, the Pancake board has sort of done.
Yeah,
the-
yes,
that
at our,
they have heard
at our
the-
July meeting, we reviewed the project and there were no objections.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Then we'll move to the next part of a public hearing, which is public statements in favor. And I will indicate that no one has registered tonight to speak in favor of this project. There was a letter in our packet from Tina Hake in support of the project. She is the property owner and a adjacent property. She has the Legion Oil.
Yep.
And Adam forwarded us all a letter from Skyway Precision. William Mitchell, the CFO there, who said that they have no objection to this going next to them. Those are the only statements I've had in favor of this project. Has anybody else received any others? Okay, public statements against. Has anybody received any? I mean, no one has registered tonight to speak against. And nobody has registered tonight to speak in general. So we're now to the point of council discussion. Oh,
Do you want me to go over-
actually, yes, I want you to go ahead with your,
Yeah, so
Sorry.
obviously one of the questions from staff, so, the staff standpoint has looked at this, and certainly since the city was a part of the grant application, we certainly, I think throughout multiple meetings and conversations we've had, everybody from a staff standpoint to I think also the common council to, as we've obviously heard from the public, is very much in favor of this project. The question obviously that has come up, which I think is very valid and needs to be discussed from the council standpoint, is with any type of plan unit development request, are there conditions that the council would wish to put on this approval? So I was kind of tasked from council leadership to kind of look into specific conditions that could be, if the council chooses, would want to put on any type of an approval. So kind of looking at that, I think definitely I would recommend that if you are going to approve the plan unit development, that regardless, we would enter into a development agreement with family advocates. And there's a couple of reasons for that that I've kind of laid out in the memo. Number one, this provides the opportunity to incorporate the Department of Administration grant award agreement and requirements we received into an additional formal agreement between both parties. Again, it's just another way to kind of quantify that we're all in agreement and everything there. The other reason that we have also talked about is with family advocates meeting multiple times, and I've been a part of those meetings, is when we get into once the approvals, if the approvals are granted to move forward and they actually start construction, there's kind of been a question in regards to how we financially handle that. Because really the city is more of a pass through, and through the grant, we are really a reimbursement opportunity. So we have to receive the receipts. We then go to the Department of Administration and get reimbursed. So one of the other reasons why a development agreement would be prudent, or I think helpful for all parties, is that gives the ability for family advocates to either work with Epic Construction and have a finalized document that they can use to potentially, either the contractor can say, okay, I'm going to take on that cost. There's an agreement that basically showcases the financial end of things, or it also gives family advocates the ability to talk to multiple banks and showcase that there is backing. There's backing from the grant, there's backing from the city. So potentially that's another reason why we would want to enter into a development agreement. One of the other reasons, obviously, we would want to do that is because in the development agreement as a city, we can put parameters on there in regards to, with a plan unit development, you can approve that just for family advocates. So therefore, if for whatever reason they would expand or go into a different area, that gives a little bit more, I guess, planning and ability for the city to ensure that if they sell it to another nonprofit, that nonprofit would have to come back in and do another plan unit development. Again, it gives us the ability to kind of review, puts a little bit more protection in there for the city. There's other, parameters that you could put in there as well, as if it would, for whatever reason, be sold to a profit entity, that obviously then the plan unit development would have to, again, be redone or look into that. Then it would have to be a taxable property, those type of things. The other consideration then that obviously the council can make would be a payment in lieu of taxes. So this is where I think, as you saw, that there's multiple perspectives to this. Obviously, this is a property that has been sitting for quite a long time. I believe 15 years has kind of been the documentation that is in there. But again, as a city and obviously as a common council, your responsibility is to be the financial stewards of the city. So when it comes to anything that potentially is a property that could, garner some type of tax base, that's something you need to consider. So what you can see in here is I did lay out kind of a couple of options of what that would look like. This isn't a TIF district. So obviously, if something is built in the TIF district, all of that money goes into the TIF. And then eventually when that TIF closes, there is only then the city portion that is applied. This is not something that has to be decided tonight. I want to make that clear. That would be a conversation I think that would be prudent to have, obviously, with family advocates, as if the direction would be from the council to enter into a development agreement. But I think it would be prudent to kind of put into some consideration of what would be a payment in lieu of taxes that is fair for all sides. Takes into account the fact that, yes, we are taking this off the tax roll. So there should be some kind of consideration for that, but then also goes into the fact that Family Advocates is a nonprofit. So if you're asking that entity to obviously have to fundraise, that's considerations they're going to have to make and consider the fact that either that is money that is being taken away from something or is something they're going to have to look into. So I think there's ways that in the future, potentially when we work on a development agreement, if that is the way the council wants to move, staff will certainly work with Family Advocates and then bring that back to the council to approve a formal development agreement and walk through that. There's a lot of different scenarios we can look at. One could be, that you could just require the pilot to be for the life of the TIF. That's an option. One could be obviously a reduction considering the fact that they are a nonprofit. So taking some form of a discount or rate that could be calculated. Another consideration that was brought into talking about this is obviously the current property that they have now is not on the tax roll, but it sounds like the intention would be to put that back onto the tax roll. So potentially that could be something that could also be worked into this development agreement, that would be another deduction that would be made based on the amount of taxes, those type of things. So obviously I think the conversation would be, the recommendation that I would tell you as the city manager is, if the council's decision is to move forward with this, would be to put a condition on there that we do enter into a development agreement that specifically talks about the financial end of the grant and everything that needs to be in there. Really hammers the fact about the nonprofit, where this is just for Family Advocates. If they were to sell it to someone, it'd have to come back to the group. And then the discussion about a payment in lieu of taxes, which again would have to be brought back to the council in a formal agreement, and further conversations would have to be had. So.
And Ken, to your questions, that could also include landscaping.
Yes.
Suggestions. It could also include.
Yep.
Other kinds of.
With any development agreement, you have the ability to put on caveats of, if there's a particular way you want it structured. Again, that has to be agreed on by both sides. I want to make that clear. But that is the option that you do have as a council, is you can put additional caveats or conditions within that request within that development agreement.
So the payment in lieu of taxes.
Yes.
That could be listed as a possibility, but then when would that be brought up?
So essentially what would happen is you would be, if the council decides to move forward with this, you are going to approve it. You are going to approve the PUD upon entering into a formalized development agreement. Then what would happen then is I will work obviously with Family Advocates. We'll have the attorney draft something that kind of has the parameters. We go back and forth. That then, continues the process. So essentially, as kind of Dan alluded to, the next step is they have to start submitting an actual site plan. They have to start kind of understanding the contractors of, okay, when are they, the contractor needs to be officially signed. They have to start figuring out some dates of when to be purchasing equipment, everything else. And then that development agreement then is one of the next steps, is essentially we have to formally agree to a development agreement that hammers out this specifics.
Okay, now I'm looking especially at the payment in lieu of taxes.
Yep. So that would be
right now they do not pay taxes.
Correct.
And also the people coming there, or clients, whatever you want to call them, they do not have the income are they charged a fee for coming?
No.
No, they're not charged a fee.
Correct.
Versus, for example, what is it, Oddfellows? They have a payment in lieu of taxes, but the people there are renters.
Right.
And so they're making a payment, whereas these people are not making a payment that are coming.
Just a
Correct.
minute. Are the Oddfellows making a payment? Not
I
anymore.
think they
No,
were.
They aren't
yeah.
making a payment.
So they're not
There's a
making a
period of
payment.
time on
Right.
that pilot.
So they're not paying any taxes at all.
Exactly.
They did at one point, is that correct?
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
discontinued.
So they're not paying any taxes
Right.
whatsoever.
Right. And so those are the considerations, obviously, that can be made by the council in that development agreement, is whether or not you want to, you can either sunset it where there is a particular date. So you can say they're only going to be required to pay it till the life of the TIF, or you can say till X amount of number of years, or you can keep it into perpetuity, or just like you indicated, Ken, you can even take that out of there. That's something that will be up to, that is the final, you will have the final approval as the common council
And
in that
then
development agreement.
Jenner Towers used to be a payment in lieu of taxes, correct? Not,
They're not,
it's not anymore.
now, the only payment in lieu of taxes we're receiving right now, is it true from Roundtree Commons? Correct.
That's correct.
Which is a not-for-profit that's paying.
Right.
On Three Commons.
Right.
Okay, that says. But then we have paying people,
Mhm.
students, 620 students. They don't have a free lunch.
Well, they might get a free lunch. Who knows? Okay, other discussion. Questions of Adam?
I would just like to make a comment that this is not unusual when there's a plan unit development to have a developer's agreement with the city. We do
No,
this quite
that is in every municipality I've been in, that is very standard, because again, there's a couple of reasons as we talked about that allows whoever, whether it's the developer, or in this case, it's family advocates, it allows them to actually go to a bank because they have a formalized document that has been signed by the city. Whereas we have grants, it just allows you to solidify a couple of things. And then again, it puts into practice, it's very common with plan unit developments that they will require, you want to have the flexibility for the city that in the event, for whatever reason, it would change hands, that property would change hands, you at least want a formal review to come back to the city. So that's where with a development agreement, that's pretty standard.
Other questions?
My other question goes back to what I talked about before. And this is, I'm trying to get at what the wind velocity will be as far as straight line winds. What are you specifying as far as tornado? I have to go back and look at the categories, but a 1, I think, is up, what, 85, 100 miles per hour? What's the 1?
EF1?
So we got 2, 3. Is it 4 or 5?
4 and 5 is, yeah.
Is the fastest. Okay. So what I'm asking is what wind velocity is this building going to be designed for?
So
As far
that
as-
will
far
be in
as-
the SIP, right, Dan?
So
Yep.
you're going to do that. You're going to bring that to us later in the,
Correct.
okay.
In a
Because
specific.
I think that's very interesting to find out, because straight winds would be very.
Well, as far as I can tell for you, shoot, now I lost it. EF range, EF1, 86 to 110, EF2, 111 to 135, EF3, 136 to 165, and that's where this ends. And if I hit another button, I'll lose it. So let's go there.
Don't do that.
It gets worse. Yeah, it gets worse. But
Well, we had a tornado, what?
So
2014.
2 of them. Yeah.
Todd, any questions of staff or anybody? Any other questions? Lynn, any questions or comments?
I have one.
I'm coming.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Has there been any discussion? I know the last time there was some discussion about how Family Advocates is a regional center, so it serves multiple counties. Has there been any talk in terms of like, are those other counties, would they be able to kind of contribute financially too, if that would be the concern?
So that's obviously a conversation that I think with Family Advocates, as being a nonprofit, they can say, it's going to come down to what you're going to request. So I think if the city does, put some caveat in there that there is a payment in lieu of taxes, those are the conversations we're going to have with family advocates, is what is the reality of, whatever that amount comes to be in that formula, that seems to be, it makes sense. Those are the further conversations we're going to have, because again, at the end of the day, our goal is, I think we all agree, we understand what this brings to the city and the benefit that it has. So we don't want to financially burden family advocates by, requiring that. But as we've talked about, it's as financial stewards of the city and of taxpayer dollars, it has to be a balance. So I think the question would be, when we start having those kind of more formalized discussions, is what is that? If we come to this number and kind of that's the direction the council is leaning towards, then it's the conversation with family advocates of what does that mean? Is that where, just as you indicated, Jason, they're going to have to go out to, their donors, and is that even a reality? Are they going to be able to do that, or Iowa County or anywhere else? I think obviously when we get to the development agreement discussions, that's where, family advocate, I think that's a legitimate question to ask them, is when we start kind of fleshing that out, hey, if this is the, a payment that makes the most sense for the city and seems to be in the realm of realism, what does that do to their day-to-day operations? Is that, as they've indicated, is that a reduction in service? Is that an additional ask they're asking somebody? We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there.
Other questions?
Just for clarification, maybe it's been talked about and I missed it. The piece of property is not owned by the city.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Other questions? I have expressed my concern about, it's all well and good that we're all good neighbors now. And my concern is not so much about the neighbors of family advocates, accepting family advocates. It's my concern is in 10 years when some industry wants to go in that's smelly or something else. I would hate for us to deny industry because we've allowed residential into an industrial park area. And while I've been assured that the current board and current administration would not do that, there's always change. So I've expressed that as my concern, that I've also heard a couple of different things. I was told earlier that there is no expansion in numbers, but then tonight we heard that the expansion, that this would double the numbers. So, I'm not sure. And I guess, well, I think you already told us you were going to go from 7 bedrooms to 10, that your current population is 23 and you expect to go to 40. So I think that's pretty much double. I don't think I've misspoken. So folks, that's the end of council discussion, I guess. If there is no more discussion, then there can be a motion to close the public hearing. I would move to close public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eileen and a second by Ken to close the public hearing. Candace will vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And now if there's any action.
Unit Development, General Development Plan for the Family Advocates Office and Shelter at 305 East Side Road on the condition of entering into a formal development agreement between the city of Platteville and family advocates.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the PUD General Development Plan for Family Advocates, the office and shelter at 305 East Side Road, on the condition that there be a formal development agreement that is written. All right. Okay. And that may include a lot of different things. Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Candace will vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, let's move on then into our agenda to the next items on our agenda. And that is consideration of the consent calendar. We have the following items on the consent agenda tonight. The council minutes from July 12th, payment of bills. I have no appointments to boards or commissions tonight. There are licenses in your packet for 1 year and 2 year operator licenses to serve and sell alcohol, and a banner permit for Dairy Days from August 22nd to September 12th. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve all items listed under the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the items on the consent calendar as presented. We'll vote. Candace?
Can you tell me who seconded that, please?
Uh,
I think it was Kathy or Todd.
Kathy or Todd? Pick
Kathy
one.
or Todd? Got it.
It was kind of a tie.
Okay.
Okay, we'll vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols, Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, there are reports in your commission, in your packet tonight. Museum Board, Eileen.
Eric is here, and Eric, if you would like to mention something about a special day coming up August 20th, maybe that, and anything else you'd like to mention.
Yes, Mine Day is coming up Saturday, August 20th.
Thank you.
The second annual Mine Day will be coming up Saturday, August 20th. Similar to Heritage Day on the 4th of July, this is an all-day family-friendly festival. However, it's a different end of fun and exciting because it focuses more on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, what they call STEAM. And this year we're bringing forth an extra robust earth science, gem, and mineral aspect to the day, with partnership with regional gem and mineral clubs, bringing lapidary arts, gem and minerals, and a lot of hands-on games for kids and family members. Live music will be bluegrass music. The Friends of the Museum will be vending all kinds of food and beverage. Should be a lot of fun. So that's going to be from noon to 4 p.m. Saturday, August 20th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to announce?
Today, the Dubuque Racing Association announced that it had awarded the Friends of the Museum a $10,000 grant of a $35,000 ask to support a capital campaign feasibility study. So that will leave some amount of money, approximately $25,000, that will be fundraising from our supporters to help to conduct the research, including interviews of a number of key stakeholders to determine the feasibility of supporting and what's currently defined as an approximately $3.5 million capital campaign for long-term renovations of the museum campus, while also continuing to raise $100,000 for the museum annual fund for general operating.
Great.
That was great news today.
All right, Airport Commission, Ms. Kopp.
Nothing to add. I just want to make a couple of announcements. Another fun-filled weekend in Platteville. The annual Boy Scout Pancake Breakfast is Sunday, excuse me, at the airport from 7 to noon. And we're going to have a little celebration at 11 a.m. We're going to have a groundbreaking for the new hangar.
Good, congratulations. Okay, Historic Preservation Commission, Ken.
no addition,
And Zoning Board of Appeals, Todd. Okay, moving, one other thing we should have brought up in citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, so I will go back. And Ms. Kopp, would you like to give a commercial for the Friday night activity.
I will. That is part of another fun family-filled weekend. As you know, the fireworks scheduled for the 4th of July were canceled. We've rescheduled them for this Friday night. Activities will be at Legion Park beginning at 6 o'clock with a kids zone. Lots of good activities for the kids. We're going to have live entertainment. Their JCs will be there with their beer garden. Veterans group will be there with concessions. Be a lot of activity. The weather's supposed to be beautiful. So bring your lawn chairs, bring your blankets, come and plan to spend the evening. The fabulous fireworks show will go off at dusk.
Okay. So it's 4th of July on the 29th of July in Platteville. All right, now we can move on to the action items on our agenda. The first is the federal awards cost allowability policy. Nicholas.
Thank you. So back in the spring of this year, the taxi bus transit program underwent a Wisconsin Department of Transportation compliance review, which is performed on a 5-year cycle. One of the findings in the review deals with cost allowability. And essentially, the finding wanted the city to adopt a policy that would, as follows, that would have procedures for determining the allowability of costs in accordance with subpart E cost principles of 2 CFR section 200 and the terms and conditions of the federal award. And so the reviewer in the compliance review provided staff with recommended language for a policy that would meet this requirement. And I have attached that language. And if the council adopts this policy, it will be included in the overall city's financial management policy. And just taking a look at the policy itself, essentially the reason for the policy or the what the policy will accomplish, we are already doing. It just formalizes how costs are charged to federal awards to make sure that only allowable costs are charged to those awards. And that will be if they are directly or indirectly charged. And you can see some criteria listed there for allowability. The cost must be reasonable. There's 4 factors involved in that. The cost must be allocable to the award and has to meet one of the criteria listed there. And there are some other details in the policy as well. And any personnel and fringe benefit costs that are charged to the award have to be benefits, fringe benefits and compensation, paid time off that are listed and provided for in the City of Platteville's employee handbook. So that is the purpose of the policy. The reason for adopting the policy is to comply with the taxi bus transit program rules. Any questions?
Questions of Nicola? Then do I hear a motion?
I guess I move to adopt the federal awards cost allowability policy.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Todd and a second by Eileen to adopt the federal awards cost allowability policy. Candace will vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cobb. Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is award of the video camera system RFP.
Yes, so within the 2022 City of Platteville operating budget, the Common Council authorized the allocation of $140,000 for the creation of a citywide camera system. The allocation was approved to be funded by $100,000 of ARPA dollars and then a $40,000 carryover from the 2021 capital improvement plan. So during the month of May, city staff worked on the creation of a video camera system RFP, which was open for submissions for vendors during the month of June. The request for proposals was advertised on the city website, within the Platteville Journal, and on the League of Wisconsin RFP website. After the deadline date for submissions on Friday, June 24th, 2022, the city of Platteville received submissions from the following firms. Telecom Technologies Incorporated, which is headquartered in Eagan, Minnesota, and TC Networks, which is headquartered in Platteville, Wisconsin. So at the last Common Council meeting, I kind of walked through both of the proposals and the individual costs. Pretty much what the recommendation we are asking for tonight would be for the Common Council to authorize entering into an agreement with TC Networks to not exceed $140,000 as what was approved in the budget. I think Jason, at the last meeting, you had kind of requested if I could provide a little bit of a better breakdown of kind of the two comparisons. I apologize. It looks like that did not get in the updated packet here, but what I can tell you is some of the concerns, obviously, that stat had between the two is we had Platteville ITS look at this. They both felt that both firms were very comparable. But one of the things we did notice was with telecom, it was more of a kind of generic proposal. Versus kind of where TC Networks actually did a much more detailed difference. And where we kind of noticed that was the difference between the two firms is telecom is recommending that we go with a cloud-based system, whereas TC Networks is kind of looking at a little bit of a combination of both, where we would actually have a recorder or a server on site. And that was one of the things that specifically kind of caught our eye, was because especially with the amount of specifically for any type of organ records requests or just any investigation, there is a lot of behind the scenes storage that has to occur. So we did have a little bit of a concern with the fact that if it's going up into the cloud, it should work, but there's always that question. Whereas we feel a little bit more comfortable if we actually have that server or data point on site. We just felt a little bit better that that was there. We also had some questions in kind of reviewing where there were some things between the two firms that TC Networks provided and Telecom didn't. So just overall, kind of the recommendation looked at, the pricing was just a little bit different, where TC Networks was seeming to come in at a little bit less of a cost, and then also provided kind of a phase two, which was looking at further areas that we want to do after we get City Hall, and also the police station kind of on board with cameras, was looking at potentially the Broski Center, obviously the new inclusive playground, and kind of looking at that. So overall, when we talked to Platteville ITS, the recommendation was definitely to go with, they said either firm definitely would be good, but they saw the benefits as well as we were kind of seeing in potentially going with TC Networks. And just overall, when we kind of analyzed the cost, they did seem to be including everything that we were kind of thinking of, the labor, the accessories, whereas with telecom, that was something we kind of had to figure out additional information. So just with that, we felt a little bit more comfortable making that recommendation. So that's the recommendation we would be looking for from the council tonight.
Okay, questions? So Adam, I'm a little confused in terms of the phase one versus phase two.
Yes.
Or a phased approach. So the 140,000, is that for phase one, or is that for everything?
So that will be essentially that will be as much as we can get for phase one. So phase one, if you look at the quote, they actually quoted, I believe it was $55,000. Okay. And what that will get us is essentially the City Hall, everything in City Hall that was identified, all the areas that need cameras, and the police station. Then phase two essentially is what they wanted to do, is they did not feel comfortable quoting that. And phase two would have been the Broski Center, looking at all of our playgrounds, all of our parks, and some various, even the city streets. And they didn't want to quote that until they were able to look at really getting the infrastructure for City Hall and the police station in order. But our intention would be to get the 55,000 done and then ask them, okay, with the money that we have remaining, what does that get us?
Okay. So it's for kind of like phase one and phase two.
Correct.
Because the cost,
yeah,
it's really not clear.
It's not, I would agree. That was one of the issues that we saw with both of them is, luckily they definitely indicated that they're willing to work with us. They didn't want to quote it because they wanted to make sure if there was ways to save money by either doing wireless or whatever. So that's something, obviously we'll bring an update back to the counselor, keep you guys informed. And as we get there, and then as we work it into the CIP, that's our plan for future phase twos, is to look at other areas and other streets that have been identified and then put that into our CIP.
So phase one is the police.
Phase one is the police station and City Hall.
And City Hall.
And then phase two will be looking at least for the first part, the Broski Center and the inclusive playground.
Inclusive playground.
And then any streets we can, intersections that we can do.
And this is just TC Networks for a maximum price of $140,000.
Correct.
And not to exceed. guess, not a max. Okay, other questions? I just wanted to clarify the phase
Nope,
one.
good
phase
ask.
two kind of thing. 55 grand for the first part and then we'll go forward. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to award the video camera system RFP to TC Networks and to authorize the city manager to enter into an official agreement with TC Networks in the amount not to exceed $140,000.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that would include phase one and phase two. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
I didn't hear a second. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
is there not a
second it.
second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Lynn,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's all right. All right. Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next on our agenda is the award of the city assessor RFP. Adam.
Yes, so kind of same thing. We brought this to the last meeting in regards to the same process. So with this RFP, we did the gamut again of putting it not only on our website, but also advertising through the Platteville Journal, putting it on the League of Municipalities. We did receive one submission, and that is with our current assessor, which is Accurate Appraisal LLC. So there is a little bit of a change, obviously, in regards to the cost, and a lot of that just has to do with obviously everything and everybody you're dealing with is now more expensive. There's inflation. There's things to consider with salaries and benefits. So potentially, what we would be looking to do is the agreement would be for $93,000 or $31,000 per year. This would be a little bit more than we've done previously. As we talked about, it was the last contract for 2020 to 2022 was $68,400 or $22,800 per year. So this will equate to an $8,200 increase in funding needed towards the operation budget each year for 2023 and 2025. So obviously looking at the fact that this was the only person that submitted, and they have done the municipality in the past, we would be looking, the recommendation would be to move forward with awarding the assessor RFP to Accurate Appraisal LLC and to authorize myself as the city manager to enter into an official agreement for assessment services to be provided for 2023 through 2025. And we would be looking at the contract would be pretty much identical to the one that we had in 2020 to 2022, where they would do 2 years of what is considered maintenance, and then there would be 1 year of an actual market reevaluation.
Which we just had.
So
this is about a 35% increase
correct
in cost. And just so we know that, and that's going to have to go into our budget.
Right.
So, but it is a 35% increase in cost. Okay, any questions of Adam? Do I hear a motion?
I move to award the assessor RFP to Accurate Appraisals LLC and to authorize the city manager to enter into an official agreement for assessment services to be provided in 2023 through 2025.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Kathy and a second by Eileen to approve this assessor 3-year assessor contract, noting that the over 30% increase. I'll just say that so that it's known. We'll have to build that into our budget. So Candace, we'll vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yeah. Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah, we really don't have a whole lot.
not really.
All right, sidewalk installation exception 1601 Progressive Parkway, Howard.
Yes, thank you. Back in 2019, we changed the zoning ordinance to require sidewalks or bike paths for new or expanded buildings in commercial areas. When a developer decides that they cannot meet that, there is a request for an exception to installation. I would be required to present the request to the Community Safe Routes Committee and Plan Commission for input, and then both bodies would make recommendations to the Common Council for a final decision. Enclosed in the packet are relevant pages of the zoning ordinance. The developer at 1601 Progressive Parkway submitted the enclosed sidewalk installation exception, detailing the property and why they should be granted an exception. This property has frontage on 3 sides. There's currently no sidewalk to the east or west to connect to. And with utilities and signage and other things on the corner, it would be difficult to install a sidewalk, at least in the current year. One other issue is that the actual property pin is in the street at the intersection of Business 151 and Keystone Parkway. So in order to install a sidewalk, the city would be required to obtain an easement or purchase right-of-way. The property directly east at 1621 was granted an exception to installing sidewalk at developer cost when the building was constructed over 10 years ago. Common Council has an option of installing sidewalk at city cost. Other properties to the east have or are planning to include construction. This parcel would be the natural connection to the west. There are 5 options in the ordinance. The council may deny the exception and require sidewalks to be installed. The other second option is to allow sidewalks to be installed on one side of the street only. That does not really apply in this case. Number 3 would be to approve the exception. Number 4 would be to allow for a delayed sidewalk installation as part of a development agreement. Or the 5th option, allow for a payment of a fee in lieu of sidewalk installation. The Community Safe Routes Committee met on June 20th, and they're recommending option 4, a delayed installation with development agreement. Plan Commission recommended option 1 to deny and require the sidewalks to be installed immediately. The city manager believes that installation of sidewalk can be a TID expense for the parcel at 1621 Progressive Parkway and the vacant lot immediately to the east as the connection to the new Arby's lot. So staff is recommending option 4, such that the property owner pays for installation of sidewalk in the future. One suggestion, as we have here, is that we consider installation of sidewalk by a date certain. So one suggestion was that we recommend the sidewalk installation allow for delayed sidewalk installation, whereby the sidewalk is installed in 2023 on the south and north frontages with easements, and that the city install sidewalks on those frontages on the 1621, 1651 parcels using TID 5 funding. And one thing that's not in here is it would also include potentially the 3rd frontage along Keystone Parkway as a possible TID 5 expense as well. One reason is because of granting easements, and the other is that the 2 parcels east of here, the Arby's and the dental place, they only have 2 frontages that they're also they're paying for at this point. So you could consider it also a fairness type of a thing as well. We have Mr. Holbrough here in the audience, who is the owner of that property at 1601 Progressive Parkway, in case there are any questions or anything.
Mr. Holbrook, if you want to come to the microphone and introduce yourself, you can. And you've heard now that there's likelihood going to be sidewalks installed on the two properties next to yours next year.
Sure. Good evening. My name is John Halborough. I am the owner and developer of the parcel at 1601 Progressive Parkway. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you guys. Appreciate all of staff's cooperation and work so far. And obviously anyone that goes by the site has seen the progress that we're making. Certainly excited to get those tenants moved in later this year and open as soon as possible. Just wanted to make one thing clear that the use of the word exception is we're not looking for an exception completely. We understand that we're going to install the sidewalks and that's something that we will comply with. I think given where we are in the stage of construction and given that the properties to the east don't have connectivity today, and then the infrastructure that is at the corner, there's some logistics that need to be worked out with the city, including the easement to put the public sidewalk on the private property, things like that. So we are, through discussions with staff, in favor of option number 4 as well. I would only like to add or just specify that maybe instead of having a date certain of 23, we put in a caveat in the developer agreement that we'll agree to put in the sidewalks or pay for the installation of the sidewalks on our property when the city installs the sidewalks on the parcels adjacent to us. So I don't know if that's something you guys would consider. So if that doesn't happen next year and it happens in 24 because of budgetary issues or whatever, we would agree in the development agreement to install them when the connectivity is made certain. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those.
Questions?
Just a question of staff. Do we have an idea when we might consider putting in sidewalks on those other two parcels? Have we talked about it?
Be a CIP.
Yeah, so our intention is if the direction would be that the council would approve this tonight, pending a development agreement in the CIP, then we would review and clarify to ensure that we can do this in TID 5, which I think we're pretty confident we can based on the former development agreements that were done before the TIF, before the expenditure period. We had a development agreement with Keystone to do improvements. So I'm pretty confident that we're good, but we'll obviously get that 100% verification. But we essentially then, as indicated, we would put that in the CIP.
So for those new to the council, if the expense is in the TID or the TIF, it comes from the increment there. It doesn't get added on to the tax rate. So it's that pot of money that we've been talking about in earlier tonight. That's the increment that builds up in a TIF to do improvements in the TIF. So that, and this TIF is not scheduled to close for quite some time and is getting quite a bit of increment because it'll get now increment off this development. It'll get increment off the Arby's. It'll get increment off the dental clinic. It already is getting increment off the McDonald's and the Sherwin-Williams and the Menards, and the new houses out there are also in the TIF. Correct. So I think there are 5 currently being built. I haven't been out there recently, but I mean, I think there were correct. 10 lots.
There's 10 permits that were pulled and they're working on 5 right now.
And 5 are, so all of that increment. So if that land was being taxed at $100 and now you've put this installation on it, that increment, that additional money goes back into the TIF. So there is plenty of money in the TIF to fund the sidewalks on this parcel, these parcels. So I just wanted you guys, because you're kind of new at the whole TIF thing. Okay, questions. So I need to understand more. I don't even know how to understand the issue on Keystone Parkway. Is that the road that goes north and south?
North and south, yes.
Well, how is it that the right of way is in the middle of the road or whatever?
The issue is that when it was originally platted and the road was put in by the developer, when they squared off the property, but at the road, they put in the radius curve. And so they basically cut the corner. I'd have to look at it again. It's like 5 or 6 feet or so where they cut the corner.
Well, whose issue is that? That's not our issue.
Well, now it is because it's, yeah, I mean, originally it was the TID developer.
The TID developer and engineer, and those are?
The developer was Platteville Progressive Park Properties, and the engineer Delta 3. But now it's ours because we've accepted the infrastructure, and then that would be my issue because I didn't notice that they cut the corner.
So what does that mean?
It means that we have a public improvement on private property.
That a public improvement would have to be installed on private property.
And then this public improvement, the additional public improvement, would have to be installed on private property. And so the appropriate thing is to have an easement agreement that would allow such a thing to happen. And, you know, as Mr. Holbrook said, you know, he's willing to work with us to make those easement agreements.
Easements cost money?
They can, but that's
Just
something that's something that the city and the property owner have to agree to as part of the conversation.
Can exceptions be granted based on development of easements that don't cost money?
I'll see what we can pull off.
It does appear, though, that obviously we need some more time to work this out, and option 4 appears to be the most reasonable ability to do that at this point.
I think that the staff recommendation now seems to be the most reasonable. And we're going to assume that Mr. Holbrook is amenable to easements that are to the benefit of all.
We're certainly, it's not a profit center. We're certainly here to work with you guys. We'll get through it.
So do I hear a motion?
Motion that the city go with option 4 of the agreement setups.
Are you doing this sample affirmative motion at the bottom? Where,
You know, I can't find that sheet right now in my pile of sheets, or I would give you the entire. Okay, here we go. I got her. I move to recommend that the sidewalk installation exception for 1601 Progressive Parkway allow for a delayed sidewalk installation as part of a development agreement whereby the sidewalk is installed in 2023 on the business 151 south frontage and the Progressive Parkway north frontage with corresponding easements, and that the city install sidewalks on those frontages on the 1621 Progressive Parkway and the 1651 Progressive Parkway parcels using TID 5 funding, period.
okay. And there was talk about in 2023 or when the city is able to install sidewalks. So let's say we have a really messy, floody year next year and we can't put sidewalks in. If we can't put sidewalks in, he probably can't put sidewalks in. So in 2023 or when the city installs, are you amenable to that?
Yes, I think as we work together, the need for more time may develop.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to allow the exception and that the sidewalks will be installed on both the north frontage and the south frontage when the city installs sidewalk on 1621 and 1651 Progressive Parkway. We'll vote. Candace?
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Welcome to Platteville.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
We have houses for sale. I'm not sure that, you'll want to continue making these trips to Pewaukee back and forth. And we have other projects that you could do. Good, thank you. All right, I believe, to get back to the right page on my agenda, but I think we have just one more action item for tonight. Deed city-owned land at 275 Lily Street, 750 Valley Road. Joe.
Thank you. Yes, so the city owns the property at 750 Valley Road. It's the water utility, which is adjacent to property at 275 Lily Street, which is owned by Lowinger Brothers Construction. Over the years, Lowinger Brothers Construction had encroached onto property that was not theirs. It was area where the railroad used to go through the city many years ago. They began filling that area, using it for storage materials, etc. They tried working with the railroad at that time to see if they could acquire that property with no success. And I can speak from experience that that is a formidable task to get a response from the railroad regarding acquiring property. But anyway, over the years, the property where the railroad used to go through it got kind of muddy as far as who actually owns it. And it does show up on the city's GIS maps and the county GIS maps as being city-owned property. So Lowinger Brothers is looking to finish kind of cleaning up their property and sell the property. They've now retired. So to kind of help clean that up, they would like the city to deed over whatever ownership rights we do have in that property, if we do have any at all, to Lowinger Brothers. And then it would just be between them and the railroad to clean that up if necessary, which I don't believe ever will become necessary. But anyway, based on the position of the property, the size and shape of the property, the elevation difference between that property and the city's water utility, it's really not feasible for the city to use it. It's really only usable by Lowinger Brothers or some other property owner adjacent to that. So given the fact that we don't really have any need for it, they have made use of it. We'd like to get it on the tax rolls. It makes sense for us to do a quitclaim deed and transfer our ownership rights to Lowinger Brothers Construction. So that would be staff's recommendation. Any questions?
Did you bring up something last time about additional concrete or something? Maybe that's where it was. Water and sewer.
Right.
Came up with
the area that we're talking about, the square footage, that there might be a caveat that you could not build on that particular piece of land because it might increase the water problem runoff for the city facility down below. Not that the city would object to the property going to the Lowinger Brothers, just that it could not be built on.
And that is an option.
So that was
that's a condition you
discussion.
can include if you would
Yeah,
choose.
recommendation of water and sewer.
I believe the way the Water and Sewer Commission meant was that there would be no increase in the impervious surface on that 0.44 acres. I mean, what's there now stays there, but can't add to it, is what their recommendation was, is the way I understood it.
Right, because there was the issue of what happens if there's additional runoff, because it doesn't have to have stormwater management, but it could be an issue in terms of stormwater management for us down the hill. So sorry,
That's all right.
I knew I heard it somewhere. I just couldn't remember where.
Wasn't.
So Mr. Lowinger is here. If anybody has questions. Sure.
I'm Lounger Brothers, Platteville here. The first time I've heard this debate. I never heard it last week.
No, it was at the Water and Sewer Commission.
all right,
It wasn't
all right.
here. So
But
the water and sewer.
It's downhill. What, if anything, if there was something built there, it would probably run the water to the south and get away from them. It would actually be advantageous. I can't imagine, it's probably going to be used for truck parking.
Right.
What you qualify as nothing being built there is kind of an ambiguous, could say, if the neighbors wanted to put up a small structure, a garage, that right now there is a, what is it? The street coming down from the west.
Yeah. Lily Street. Yeah.
No, that's runs in front of
Laura Street.
Laura.
Yeah.
Now that water now expels out of a tube to the Valley Road, and that causes problems once in a while. But back where we are, where this land is for a large part, is protected by existing buildings that are our existing buildings protect much water. So how to word no structures or no building, I would.
Yeah, I think Howard said no impervious surface. So
Increase.
No increase in impervious surface.
Well, what if, right now we have a large concrete pad,
Right.
2 of them, and there's 30 feet of gravel in between. Now, and that water runs to the south. If it either runs to the south or it runs into the water department land. So if it was laid out in the way that it ran to the south and then down kind of to where behind south of the one water department building, would that work? You just don't want water running straight, venting straight over into the.
Right, that was the discussion at the Water and Sewer Commission meeting, is if there was more surface, either a building or expanded parking areas or something like that, that directed the water directly over the hill at the water department buildings, that was the way that I understood the discussion. That was what the concern was, is, you know, you have the hill there and you have the erosion, and they were, and the commission members were concerned that if you had essentially more water going over the edge of the hill,
you could have impervious surface there if it was routed in a proper way, not to run into the water.
They didn't discuss that, but I think that's something that we could work with, you know, that goes along with the intent of what the commission was recommending. I mean, it's the council that makes the final decision.
Although the council would put that parameter on.
Sure.
That was the recommendation for water and sewer. So maybe the best thing to do, since Mr. Allowanger hasn't heard about this, and since that hasn't been discussed with them, maybe a best thing to do would be to table this until you and he can have that discussion and come up with some parameters, and then we could have it on the next agenda.
The wording of what wouldn't satisfy.
That's fine.
Right. Sure. Maybe that's the way we should think about this. So do I hear a motion perhaps to table till the next meeting, when the two can kind of come up with some kind of wording?
I'll make a motion to table for 2 weeks.
Second.
Okay, motion to table until our next meeting, so that Mr. Lowinger. and
I'd
Mr.
rather do it
Crowfoot,
that way
and-
than
Yeah.
fight
Yep.
something 10 years down
Okay,
the road.
we'll vote. We had a motion and a second. Candace will vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that's the last of our action agenda items. And Mr. Lowinger, we'll have this on the agenda next time in August, whatever that is. 9th. Okay. And let us now go to the information items, the first of which is the City of Platteville quarterly financial report.
Yeah, so knowing obviously we have some closed session discussion items tonight, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but one of the things that obviously was part of a new council initiative was to provide council members in the community with kind of a quarterly financial report to showcase areas where the city is exceeding, on track, or below revenue or expenditure projections. So what you have in this staff note kind of showcases to you the estimated revenue breakdowns as of 6/30/2022. So if you think about it, we're 2 quarters in. So typically what we want to see is we want to be about 50% for the most part in some of our revenue areas. And that is going to be a little bit misleading, as the staff note kind of says, because there are some caveats to that. So we do get in the 3rd quarter some more payments either from the state or from various other entities. So that is why some of these you'll notice in certain areas we're either well ahead of the curve in 91%, particularly for taxes. And in some areas such as intergovernmental, we're at 20%. That's because we get our state aids typically in the month of either October and November. So this just kind of provides you with a little bit of a reference point to see kind of where the majority of our funds are kind of budgeting out. And then the same thing is true for expenditures. So it also showcases all of our expenditures as of 6/30/2022. So for the most part, as you can see, looking at the expenditures, we are tracking fairly well in regards to expenditures. There are certain items that we have noticed we are definitely above. And those we have kind of caveated with either changes we're going to have to make in the budget. And we talked about that kind of the last time in regards to insurance. That's a one-time payment, and there's a lot of factors that play into that. So that is kind of a budgetary guess 9 times out of 10. And unfortunately, as with the climate, as kind of Council President Doss alluded to, we're seeing some increases in a lot of our vendors. We're seeing that as well. We also then provided kind of the billing utilities and also the fuel usage. Fuel usage is one that we are definitely going to be monitoring. As you can see, this is right now showing about 34%. That is a little bit misleading because we do get a lot of our actual charges in the month of July. So those have not been factored in yet. So we are seeing, obviously, with the cost of gas, we are seeing some increases in there. So staff, again, are continuing to monitor and look at budgetary forecasts for that. But again, overall, we are looking to forecast within our budgetary explanations. And then the last little piece of this is just to kind of give you some kind of spreadsheet and graphical information. So you can kind of see where we have trended in regards to what I consider to be kind of the big 12 revenue areas that we continue to monitor every quarter or every month. And then also the big kind of 12 expenditures. And right now, the only ones we've really seen are insurance right now are red flags. Otherwise, all of our other areas currently are kind of on track. But, you know, we're going to consider after we get kind of the July financials done here, we're going to do a little bit more as we look into the budget. And obviously, if we see anything that really is a red flag, we'll bring that back to the council as more of a discussion. But what I would ask is just kind of take a look at this information. And if you have any questions, by all means, send me an email, or we can set up a time where I can go over it and kind of explain any questions that you might have. And we'll go from there. But again, this is just kind of a way to kind of show you guys what we try to monitor here, or what staff monitors and I monitor basically on a daily and monthly basis.
Okay, any comments, questions, or concerns to share with Adam?
I have just one related to pecan.
Yes.
So it's traditionally, historically, there's always a fee that is charged. So through this process, did the city just get a bill, or were you part of the discussion? It just.
Correct.
Sure. So Pecan is made up of a membership, of which you're probably familiar with, of nonprofits, major nonprofits in the city. And the annual fee was stable for many years since its inception. And there was an objective to have a certain amount in reserves for, you know, if there was to be, say, a major fiber cut or some other kind of damage that needed to be repaired. That reserve level had been accomplished. And so it was, there was 1 year where the fee dropped substantially. I think it was $2,500 less per year. But then there was a consensus from the Pecan committee that the following year that the fee should be raised just a little bit for a year. I would have to go back to my minutes from the meeting to understand all of the ins and outs of why the consensus was formed to have that fee at the $6,300. But it's anticipated that I think what happened is there was discussion about having it be reduced. And during the discussion, one of the amounts that was put forth was $5,000. That was about the time that we were budgeting. So that's what hit the budget. But then later on in the year, when the final decision was made, it was reduced, but not all the way down to 5. It was reduced to 63. And so that's why we're coming in above budget, because at the time that we formed budget, we were a little too optimistic on how much it was going to decrease.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I find this report to be very good, so thank you very much. And this is a new kind of report for us, so
you're welcome.
We're still getting used to it, and that kind of thing. Okay, then we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is a resolution relative to 2023's fee schedule. Candace. This is all in anticipation of our budget discussions that are soon to start.
Yeah, so we did this a little earlier in the year than we usually do. Usually we don't do this until around the December timeframe. So yeah, hopefully that will help with budgets when everybody's looking through that. So annually, staff reviews the fees charged by the city of Platteville for various license, permits, inspections, programs, etc. As and has suggested the following changes below to the current fee schedule. All changes have been highlighted in red and briefly point out, they're briefly pointed out in the staff note as far as the sections that were affected by the changes. Any questions relating to the changes in the fee schedule should be directed towards the staff and those departments. I just feel that they're probably better to answer those for you than myself. But I will take the first item. So the changes to the administration fee schedule will be, as proposed, is a decrease in the renewal liquor license publication fee to $6 per applicant, and an increase to new liquor license publications fee to $49.50 per applicant. This is quite a bit of change on both ends. The reason for this change is per state statute, we are not allowed to overcharge anybody for publication fees. So the reason why I've lowered it to $6 per applicant is when we send that whole list of, it's quite a big posting, there's a number of people that we post that publication for, and then we've been divvying that up amongst them, and we've been charging them at $25 per applicant. And actually what we are being charged, if you divide it by the applications that we receive, it should be quite a bit lower to the $6.
So Candace, let me interrupt you, because in your fee schedule, it says you've been charging them $15 and that you're going to now charge them $7. At least in the fee schedule we have. And it says that for new liquor license publications, you've been charging people $25 and you're now going to charge them $50.50.
Yes, I apologize. So I apologize for that. I do understand that discrepancy now that you're saying that. So that I obviously need to update my my staff note, because the discrepancy in that would be, so I misspoke on the 25. It was 15 previously. The reason why I've changed it to 7 versus the 6 is because I had a conversation with the Platteville Journal that they anticipate their fees to go up at the beginning of the year. So I apologize that I did not update that in my staff note there. So I will do that before the next meeting for you guys. But yes, it will be the $7 based on their anticipated fee schedule raises at the beginning of the year. Because none of this will be happening until 2023. So then the publication fee for individual ones, that's a pretty big jump. I did find out that we've been totally undercharging people for that, is basically what I learned there. But so we were charging people the $25, and that will need to go up to the 50 amount. At least that's what I'm proposing based on state statute. Now, state statute does not say that we have to charge exactly what we are being charged. So if it is not approved by the council to raise it up to where we are covering our charges, that would be something we would have to cover on the city's end versus it being paid for by the applicant. But it does state in the statute that we're not able to overcharge. So that's where I'm at with that. But as far as the other changes to the fee schedule, it would be under building inspections, museums, parks and recreation, planning and development, and public works and cemetery.
Okay, and so the suggestion would be that if you have questions on the increase in fees for any of those departments noted, or if you have questions on why fees weren't increased or decreased in any department, that you would funnel those questions through Adam and the department chair, so that at our next meeting, there is knowledge and we're ready to move forward on a fee schedule for 2023. I don't think we want to go over all of these fees tonight. Okay, anybody with additional questions or suggestions as it relates to fee schedule? Okay, thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
All right, that ends the regular scheduled information and discussion items. We do have a closed session planned, and so I would take a motion to go into closed session per state statute 1985, parent 1, parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And there are two.
Oh, sorry.
There are two items that we'll be discussing. One is with deals with the armory, and the other deals with the development agreement.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion in a section to go to closed session, and to go to closed session and not to return, no decision making, and we will not return to open session. Okay.
Arts?
Yes.
Parrot?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Cobb?
Yes.
Motion carries.